everybody, I'm Elise from the blog LePetiteSaintCrochet.com, and yes, I'm only holding a little reindeer head right now, but today I want to talk about knitting toys, focusing on the face. This is all about toy heads, knitted toys, faces, all of those things, and I'm going to share my process, why I think that this is the most important part, and actually how I do it. In an ideal world, we would be able to spend gobs of time attending to every single detail of our knitted toys, but that ain't gonna happen. We have stuff to get done, we've got things to do, we've got places to go. Well, we don't really have a lot of places to go right now because we're in the middle of a pandemic, but we've got things to do. And for me, I have adopted the mentality of I've got to get the most bang for my buck, and what I think is that attending to the details of the face of a knitted toy is the most important part. If you get the face right, the rest of it will come together. But if you get the face right, that is actually, it's the star of the show. It's the place that people are going to look at very, very first. Now, this is the little deer pattern from Little Cotton Rabbit. It's actually a free supplement to the fox pattern. So if you have the fox pattern already, you can get the deer supplement that just adds the little reindeer antlers, which was really fun. And I learned how to do an I-cord, and someone left me a comment on the YouTube channel that I-cords were not that difficult to do, and guess what? You were right. They are so simple. So I'm really glad that I learned how to do the I-cord. I'm going to take you through my entire process. It's really kind of simple, but I'm going to show you a few things and make sure that you watch till the part about the eyes, because that one is the most important step, and I bet you haven't seen this technique before, and to me it is life-changing as far as knitting toys is concerned. As always, I will have links for everything in the description box below, but also I just want to let you know that I did use Barocco Vintage for the little body right here for this little, this is the, I can't even remember the name of these colors. Let me look. I just checked. This is the buttercream color, this is the off-white, and this is mushroom, which is a really light tan. I love this combination. And then for the little antlers, I use Debbie Bliss Baby Cash Merino, and that's because I'm going to be using that for the clothing as well, which I haven't even started yet, but I'm gonna get to it pretty soon. So let's go ahead and start by looking at stuffing. I am not a big fan of that term, and here's why. Because I think when we think of the term stuffing, we just think, oh, we're just like a turkey. You're just stuffing this inside, which is really not what we want to do. We're not really stuffing the polyfill inside. What we're doing is what I like to call shaping or sculpting. We are actually shaping our toy with the polyfill. So what I like to do is make sure that I'm creating shapes within the head. Now the body, I don't do as much shaping, but with the head, it's really important for me to do that. So for example, I kind of start in the back, and I want this to be a little bit more flat. I do not want this bulging out, because here's why. If you make this bulging out here in the back, it can start to make the head look more like a torpedo. With these Little Cotton Rabbits patterns, if you're not careful, the heads can look like a torpedo, ready to launch. And that is not the goal. Our goal is to get this looking a little more finessed. And a couple of the places that I really like to make sure that have enough stuffing are the top of the head here. The cheeks are also two really important places, but also I want you to kind of notice right here in his nose. By stuffing more in this area and less in this area, I've got this little turned up effect that I really love and I think looks really nice. So the next time you go to stuff the head of your toy, start thinking about where do I want more stuffing, where do I want more fullness, and where do I want less fullness. One of the absolute best resources for all of these techniques is also the pattern from Little Cotton Rabbits. If you really read the part about stuffing, you are going to see that Julie really has some wonderful recommendations about how she stuffs, and I use those in addition to my own to create toys that have a lot of shaping in the head. The second part part is actually about the ears. Now I have already gone ahead and I attached the ears, so I cannot show you with this toy. But one thing that you might want to think about is that when you put your ears on, the lower you put the ears on kind of gives the toy a little bit of an innocent, a little sweet look. If you want your toy to have a little bit of a sad face, you might drop the ears lower. As you bring these ears up higher, you're giving your toy an alert, a happy, a bright look. So play around with ear positioning, whether they're more forward, a little more back, if they're higher up, if they're a little bit lower down. It really does change the entire look of your toy. So this is the part that gives all of us the most amount of trouble, and that is when we start to embroider. Now, I am not an embroiderer. I don't do this in my free time, and I struggle with this just like everybody else does. So I get a lot of comments like, oh, I just can't make it look right. Well, none of us can. And honestly, I usually end up doing this multiple times because it rarely looks right. Now, with this little reindeer pattern, one area that I'm really careful about is that I'm going to be bringing my black thread in between the white and the brown right here, the tan and the off-white. So I'm going to be really careful about pulling those stitches really hard because this is going to separate this intarsia knitting area right here. So I like to keep the underneath part of my toy open. That way I can hide all of these little threads in, and I don't want a super large nose. So I'm coming down here. I'm not super far up the nose while I'm starting to do this. I also don't put a knot at the end of my thread, but I like to leave a long enough tail that I can pull on it after. So the next thing I'm doing is I'm going to make sure that I am directly across. I'm going to come all the way across, and I'm going to come right underneath where I went in over on this side. And I'm going to be careful not to pull too tight and just move that where it needs to go. And using your hands is a really good way to make sure that you like where the thread is going, because you can move it around a little bit. Now, it'll be a miracle if the first time I do this is the way I'm going to keep it, because rarely is that the case. I also don't necessarily like it when those threads cross each other, because that starts to make it look a little bit messy. So I'm going to keep going across as close as I can, but even if there's a little bit of a gap, I can work with that later. It's okay. And I'm trying not to split my thread here as I'm doing his little nose. Okay, all right, so far so good. I'm just looking here, and it really helps that there's this intarsia color change right here, because it really gives me a very good guide for the evenness of the sides of the nose here. Just keep going. Oh, I got wrapped around the ears here. There we go. Just try not to pull tightly, and then I'm going to move it up. So far it's looking pretty good. So the next thing I'm going to do is I've got a teeny tiny little bump right there where it kind of comes out. I'm going to just outline this, and I'm going to see how that looks. I kind of like to try to outline it at the end, sort of neatens the whole thing up, or I could be completely ruining it, but I'm going to go for it anyway. So I'm going to see how this kind of, if it cleans it up or not. Here's the deal. I can always take it out if I don't like it. Okay, I'm kind of liking how that's looking right there. Okay, and now I'm going to go right here in the center of the nose, and I'm going to come down right in the middle where I want the little mouth to be. And I'm just trying to straighten these little threads out. Okay, so far so good. So now I'm going to bring this thread up here to the center, again right where I went in. I'm going to come out to the side here. And then I'm going to bring it back around. And I'm going to try to get it straight across, right across his mouth so that it's pretty even. And I'm going to come back out right at the end of the little line between his nose and mouth. Alrighty, pretty happy with that. Now I'm going to just bring it back on the other side of the mouth so it acts as a little tack to keep it down, and I bring it through here, and then I'm going to kind of look at the whole thing. Alright, so that's looking a little bit crooked. I just kind of move it around. I pull this, our original thread there, pull it just gently, that way it's taut. And I think it's looking pretty good. Well, it's looking a little crooked there, isn't it? Now, sometimes that can just mean I need to stuff it a little bit. Just get my stuffing right. Move this around with my hand. Kind of look at it from this angle. From this angle. I can see a little thread poking out right there that's bothering me. I gotta decide what to do about that. I might actually be able to kind of push that in a little bit. Let's see. Yeah, that worked. Use your hands and use your needle to finesse and to work it out and to fuss around with it a little bit. And if you're not happy, just take it out and redo it. But here's the deal. Most of the time mine are not perfect, and I usually don't care. It ends up being just fine the way it is. He's got a bit of a crooked smile here. Okay, a lot of that is just because I need to probably stuff a little bit more here, and if I stuff just a little bit more, it will keep this from moving around a whole lot. So I'm pretty happy with that. And for the nose, I like to use embroidery floss. I don't like to use yarn for the nose and mouth. I think that it's a little bit too thick to make it look nice and neat. I think the embroidery floss is what works best. Sometimes I don't even use all 6 strands of the embroidery floss, and I just separate it, just depending on the toy. The finer the yarn, the less strands I'm going to use, but this is the Barocco Vintage. It's a nice thick worsted weight. I'm okay with using all 6 strands of the embroidery floss. I think this makes it look a lot neater than when you use yarn. This next technique is for the eyes, and I did not come up with this at all. This is from Cherik's Knit a Dream, and she is on Instagram. I'm going to leave a link for her account because she has a video, and it was from October 13th of 2020, and she does a full tutorial for how to do the eyes. Because this is her technique, I'm not going to show you exactly how to do it as a tutorial, but I will let you see how I'm doing it. And I went and just watched her whole video, and I took notes and I wrote down each one of the steps, and I'm really happy that I did this. And this is the best way I've ever seen to make anchored French knots.
I'm going to say Christmas Eve is coming soon. Now are you, dear old man? Whisper what you bring to me. Tell me if you can. When the clock is striking 12, when I'm fast asleep, down the chimney broad and black, your pack, your queen, all the stockings you will find hanging in a row. Mine will be the shortest one, you'll be sure to know.
What I love about this process of making the eyes is that it creates that little indentation, and I think that that is what makes this look really, really nice, because that's part of the shaping. It's not just sitting on top of it, it's actually pulling it in a bit, making little eye sockets, which now you could actually embellish this a little bit. I've actually done this before where I've used a little bit of dry paint and I painted sort of around the eyes to give it a little bit of a darker effect around each one of the eyes. But I think that this is a really great technique. Go check out Cherik's Knit a Dream because she really has some great tutorials for knitted toys. Always make sure to try to keep your working yarn that you're going to be using to seam the head closed kind of out of the way. That way it doesn't get entangled in all of your other threads that are coming out. But I've decided I'm going to show you guys how I do the little white outline. I'm not sure if it's really going to actually show up with this little guy because this is the off-white, but you know what, we're gonna see. So I just come to the right of the right eye over here, basically kind of towards the bottom, and I've got just white embroidery floss here. And then I'm going to come all the way around and basically go back in on the opposite side right there. So it sort of creates almost a complete circle around that French knot. And I'm gonna see, and you almost have to sort of tuck it under that French knot a little bit because otherwise it will cover it up. Now you really don't see that very well because this is the off-white color, but it is there. And I'm going to do it on the other side as well. And that although you don't really see this with this one, I always like these little tiny details that maybe nobody else is gonna see them, but I see them. I think that's what really makes toys look really good, is when you attend to all the small details, particularly in the face. Other parts of the body, I don't worry about too much, but the face, yes. Okay, I want to kind of hook it up under that French knot a little bit so that it's not gonna pop out. And you could use a sport weight white yarn so that you could see it a little bit better. You can see it a little bit with this. It's not super visible because this is the off-white yarn, but if this was a darker color, you would definitely be able to see that little tiny white outline there. So one of the things that I really like to do is to use blush with a paintbrush. And I think that adding just a little bit of color to a couple of places actually makes the toy look so much better. So I just get a little bit of blush on my paintbrush and I just kind of wipe it off a little bit on my hand so that it's not too strong. And then I just bring it inside the ear. It's one of the places that I actually really like to add blush because sometimes in children's illustrations they'll have little pink insides of their ears, and I think that that looks so cute. It just gives it a cute little detail, and I love all the details. So now we're gonna do a little bit on the cheeks. I'm gonna be a little bit careful here because I don't want this to be too bright. But the good thing is, especially about using human blush, actually it's a positive and a negative. The human blush comes off quite easily. It doesn't stay forever. Some designers use things like crayon. They actually get a crayon and they rub it in there, and I'm sure that that would probably be a little more permanent, but I kind of adopt the a little goes a long way. You can always add more. It's harder to take it off. I think this adds a lot, just having a little bit of color on his cheeks, kind of try to make it a little bit round, a little color on the cheeks, a little color on the inside of his ears, and I think it just looks really cute. So now I'm ready to just go ahead and stuff all of these excess pieces of yarn and embroidery floss, and I'm just literally going to stick it in there because it can be part of the stuffing, and the good thing is you're never going to see them on the other side. And I think this is such an easier way to do things, is to just leave this head completely open while you're doing this. This is one of the things that I think works best this way. I've tried it both ways and I like this way the best. Now sometimes I accidentally end up seaming the head closed before I do these parts, and then I have to just weave in the ends, but it's not my preferred method. So now I'm ready to just go ahead and start seaming his little head up. This is also the time that if you're like, listen, I think he needs a little more stuffing here or a little more stuffing there, go ahead and do that now, and you've got a really good idea how the toy is looking and if it needs anything more at this point. I've got my flat little head, I've got a little bit of the upturned nose going on here, I like the indentation of the eyes, and I like these full little cheeks. He does have a bit of a crooked mouth, but I'm okay with it. As always, thank you so very much for stopping by the Le Petit Saint Crochet YouTube channel today. If you liked this video, would you please hit that like button, and would you subscribe to the channel? That would be amazing. Please let me know in the comments if you found any of this helpful, or if you have your own tips for knitted toy faces particularly, because I love learning new things from people who love to knit toys just as much as I do, and I love hearing from you guys and where you're from. You guys are from all over the world, which is amazing to me. I absolutely cannot believe that there are so many people from South America and Europe and Asia, but the one place that I think that I haven't heard of yet is Antarctica. I don't think anybody in Antarctica is watching the channel, but if you are, please let me know. That would be so amazing. But as always, I thank you so much for stopping by the channel. Stay safe out there and happy stitching.